I'd now like to show you how we can manage and create users inside of our Azure Active Directory environment. Now, to start with, I just wanted you to be aware that we're going to use the portal.azure.com method of doing this first, and then we'll jump over to the Microsoft 365 side and we'll look at how we can create and manage users over there. Ultimately, they all end up in the same place, which is Azure AD. All right. So here we are on portal.azure.com. We're going to click the menu button here and we're going to go down to the Azure Active Directory blade, and then from there we're going to click on users. Now be advised, you're going to see a lot of users in my little environment because I use this Azure tenant to teach a lot of different courses with. So just ignore the fact that, you know, if you're doing this on your end, you're not going to have all the same users as me. That's not a big deal. All right. But here I am under users, and I want to click to create a new user. I'm going to click create new user, and then we would give the username. And I'm just going to come up with some random names. I'm going to call this user Lucas Paulson, and that'll be at examlabpractice.com. Notice you could choose domain name here. And then display name, we'll say Lucas Paulson. And then, of course, we can set the password, or we can do an auto-generated password, which is what it's doing. Also, right now the account is going to be enabled, but if we did not want the account to be enabled, we could uncheck that box, and then at that point the account would not be enabled. The account would be disabled. All right. So, and of course, you know, you might do that in a scenario where maybe you've got a user that's going to be, you know, joining the company, you know, next week, and so we're just going to deactivate the account until it's time for the user to start. All right, so anyway, we're going to click next, and then you would just fill out the property information here if you wanted. All right. Member type, this user's a member as opposed to a guest. Specify job title, company, department, all this. I'm not going to fill all this stuff out right now, but I will say there's one important key ingredient thing you want to do, and that is you want to specify a usage location. Now, the reason that is important is because you cannot assign this user any licenses for any products unless they have a usage location. If you try to assign a license to a user without doing usage location, you will get an error message. So we're just going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to say United States, and we'll click next. And then if we wanted to assign what is called an administrative unit, we could. If we want to add a group, role, I'm not getting into any of that stuff right now, but this is where you could do that. From there, we would click next, review and create, and then at that point, we click create, and we've now created ourselves a user. So very easy, you know, very painless process to create a user. And we should be able to find that user in here. Here it is, Lucas Paulson. If we want to edit the user's properties, we can. We just click on Lucas Paulson, and then from there, if you want to change anything, you're going to click Edit Properties, and then you can change it from here. Now, let me warn you, this is yet another thing that's constantly changing. It feels like this interface changes like every week. So just be advised, it doesn't matter how many times I update my videos, it's like this changes, it feels like every week. So your screen could look a little different than mine. You know, it is what it is. It's constantly changing. But anyway, you can go through here and you can modify these various settings for this user if you wanted. These different pieces of information that you could have set. You could do that here. There's even parental controls here. Set what's called age group, consent, provide for minors. I'm not going to get into all that right now, but that's kind of neat. And then settings, and then also if this was on-premise related, which it's not, that would be here. Speaking of which, this account that we just created, Lucas Paulson, is what we call a cloud-only account. That means that it was created in the cloud. It is not an on-premise account. Now, if you have an on-premise domain and you set up the Azure AD Connect or Connect Sync, that's going to synchronize users out here to the cloud. All right, but it's not with Lucas Paulson. Is not going to be syncing, you know, back into on-premise or any of that right now. This is just a cloud-only account, so it's only out in the cloud environment. Okay, so that is how we can create users graphically using the Azure portal. Now let's jump over and look at the Microsoft 365 side of this and see how we can do it there. Okay, so here I am on portal.microsoft.com. We're going to drop down users and click active users. And you're going to notice that if I scroll down, you will see Lucas Paulson, because again, this is all tied back to Azure AD, so it all links to the same place. But let's go ahead, we're going to create a user this way, so we'll click Add User. All right, so same kind of thing. It does look a little different now, I will say that. It does look a little different, but you're going to fill out a lot of the same information. All right. One of the complaints that people do have, though, is that there are some features that you'll see in the Azure portal version of this that you won't see in Microsoft 365, and vice versa. There's certain things you'll see in Microsoft 365 portal that you don't see in Azure portal. So it's a little annoying, but you just one of those things you have to get used to. So here we go. I'm going to create a username, Jenny Sampson. Display name, Jenny Sampson. Username is going to be Jenny Sampson. All right. So the name is available. I could have it automatically create a password. Require this user to change password at their first log on, so we could do that, and then send password via email. If we wanted to, we could put an email address in for the user and then have it send it. Okay. So we'll click next. One thing that's unique about this that was different from the Azure way is that the Azure method, we could go over here, we could, with this user, Lucas Paulson, we could assign licenses and all that, but we didn't get the opportunity to assign licenses while we were creating the user. But you'll notice that with doing it through Microsoft 365 method, you do get to assign licenses immediately. Also, one other interesting thing, it forces you to select a location, whereas the Azure portal version of that, you could create the user without actually specifying a location, which means when you go to assign licenses, you could have problems. So that's kind of interesting, but that is something that we get with this. All right. I'm not going to assign a license right now. I'm just going to say create user without product license. I'm going to click next. I'm not going to get into roles. Here's where you specify profile information, so job title, department, all that stuff. And then we would click next, and we click finish adding, and then we've now got our user created. All right. And if we want to go through and modify the properties of that user, we can click on the user. All right. So some similarities here, but there's definitely a few things that are different. So I can go through here, and anything I want to change, there's a little hyperlink next to it. So it's a little different. You have devices that the user uses, which currently this user has not used any devices. Licenses that have been given, which I didn't give any licenses. Mail, if it's associated with Exchange Online, I have to give a license before this person would get a mailbox in Exchange Online. And then if the user has OneDrive, you'll see that information over here. All right, you could also block sign in for the user. Now, if we jump back over to the Azure portal, let's go to our users there, and let's see if this user is showing up in Azure. So click on users, scroll down, and look at there's Jenny Sampson. So we can click on Jenny Sampson and we can modify it the Azure way of doing it. So ultimately, again, the thing to remember here is it's all going to the same place. It's all going to Azure AD. You're just looking at a couple of different ways that the user accounts could be created. All right. And so that is the graphical way that we can create users within Azure and Microsoft 365.